Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Carrick. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! Scores! They score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from Vanta, Finland. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 56 for Tuesday, October 26, 2021. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring a discussion of Google-funded ag tech startups, we're not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy. Thanks for tuning in today. If you're new to hearing the Calder Farmstead talk about hockey, we're going to recap some of the matchups this past weekend for you. I watch a lot of AHL games, as does my usual co-host, Cece. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break that down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from. Scroll all the way to the bottom there and click episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some more of the advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes reading Russell Wilson's poetry today. You'll never get that time back. So why not next time spend a little more time with us talking AHL hockey? All right, as Cece is on the IR, I have brought in a guest to help me balance out the discussion, as listening to me talk is by myself is something we're going to try and keep to a minimum on this episode. So here I managed to rope in Mitch Anderson from Fanside's Isles on Islanders. He co-hosts the Eyes on Isles podcast and has his own YouTube channel that breaks down New York Islanders prospects in the AHL and abroad. We will make sure that we link to that in our description today so you can find all of that. Thank you for joining us, Mitch Anderson.
Thank you for having me. It's fun to be on a show that I watch, so I'm going to have to watch myself, which is always strange.
Oh, yeah. It's I do my best after the episodes are recorded to never, ever watch them because I already know how weird my hair looks, especially episode to episode, as like I started with really long hair and then I got it cut for my wedding and now it's starting to grow again, mostly due to laziness. So it's quite an adventure to see yourself on YouTube, especially with the basis that you are as well.
Yeah, so I hear you. I'm not used to seeing you with the short hair. So P.S.
Yeah,
congrats on the wedding. I hope those nups were dope.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing time. Speaking of amazing times, Bridgeport had quite a weekend this weekend. So let's get everything fresh in our listeners' minds here because this is going to go out Tuesday. Some time has passed. So let's quickly recap the goals that got scored here this weekend. Grant Hutton opened the scoring Friday with a blast from a point that hit a T-Birds player in front and just deflected in top shelf. Sometimes you get lucky ones. In a fun bit of irony, that's how Springfield scored their first goal Friday, as Perunovic hit a Bridgeport player in the front of the net for a good luck deflection. To bring it full circle, that was, of course, Grant Hutton. Springfield takes the lead on a power play goal as Hugh McGing threads a Royal Road pass through Andy Androv and Thomas Hickey to find Nathan Todd, who puts it home into a wide open net. Thomas Hickey's fortunes did not improve as he gets turned around in the neutral zone in transition, and Matthew Pekka blows past him and goes bar down over the blocker of Ken Appleby. Saturday, Parker Wotherspoon makes a bad turnover in his own end. Dakota Johnson recovers behind the Bridgeport net, finds Perunovic at the top of the circle. Perunovic freezes everyone, finds Big Mac Mackenzie McEachern on a Royal Road pass for a tap-in. Springfield goes up 2-0 as Logan Brown takes a pass from Nathan Walker and walks from the corner right into the front of the net, basically untouched, to tuck in a backhand. Springfield goes up 3-0 as Perunovic finds Nathan Walker, who sneaks away from Seth Helgeson and bangs home one on the doorstep. But Bridgeport gets the comeback started less than 3 minutes later. Austin Zarnik flubs a shot from the point. It trickles right to Michael Dowcole in the high slot. He rifles it past Charlie Lindgren, low glove side to make it 3-1. The power play strikes again as Arnon Durando makes a great use of his hockey IQ and completes what I think is like an alley-oop style play excuse me for a second there. Autocuevala hits Durando with a Royal Road pass as almost a wide shot attempt, catches Durando racing to the far post in motion for a tap in. It's basically an alley-oop in hockey, or as close as you're going to get to it. Bridgeport ties it after an awkward line change by Springfield leads them to not look like they're ready to defend their blue line in transition. Dalcole walks in basically uncontested down the near wall, gains the zone, finds Zarnik in the middle, who bumps it to Terry just outside the far faceoff dot for a one-timer that sneaks under the blocker of a sliding Charlie Lindgren. And Robin Salo completes the comeback in overtime after he cuts back into the slot, gains separation from Sam Annis, and just rips a wrister past Charlie Lindgren from the game-winning goal. But that was not the entire weekend, as then they had to go all the way to French Canada. Sunday, a blown D-zone coverage by Michael Pizzata gives Anatoly Golashev plenty of runway to walk down from the blue line and rip a wrister past a heavily screened Caden Primo. Pizzata's night doesn't get any better as he makes another turnover in his own zone. In transition, Simon Holmstrom scoops it up, dishes it to Golashev in the slot, who pots his second of the night, and Chris Terry ices it with an empty netter to give Bridgeport the 3-0 win over Laval. Lots of good, lots of bad from this weekend from Bridgeport. Mitch, what did you see big picture-wise from Bridgeport that you liked, didn't like, maybe kind of thought it was okay? Give me your thoughts on this weekend for Bridgeport.
So like back-to-back wins, that's great. Didn't like a lot of bad play from some veteran players, like you mentioned, Tomas Hickey. You know, you would expect someone like Tomas Hickey to be a leader, not that he would be a dominant player, but to be a leader for them and not make these simple mistakes. And he did, which kind of plays into the fact as to why he's not in the NHL, even though he has a $2.5 million cap hit. Was okay. Just the fact that they're 500. I like that they're 500, but I'd like to see them better than that. I thought they would be better than this, specifically some of the moves they made, like bringing in some veterans. The play of Ken Appleby has been pretty nice. And I thought some other guys like Simon Holmstrom would start taking a bigger step. It's starting, but it's not where I would like it to be. It's still early. So that's the kind of, you're only 500 through the first, leg of the season. I would like to see better. But they played well against a Springfield team that is one of the better teams in the AHL, right? And they played well against the better player in Scott Paranovich in the AHL.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talked about him in our preseason scouting. I couldn't believe he didn't make St. Louis. I thought for sure that he was going to be a lock from them out of camp on their blue line. And when I saw him get sent to Springfield, I'm like, oh, well, he's going to tear up the AHL. Like, I said it earlier in our preview, that kid can ball, and that's absolutely what he's shown through a handful of games in the AHL this year. He's lighting it on fire, and that's exactly what I expected. I said the same thing about Nathan Todd. Like, I don't know how Manitoba saw Todd do so well last year, and he has shooting talent. Shooting talent is the rarest and most valuable thing in hockey, and Nathan Todd, for better or worse, has shooting talent. Maybe not like high-end NHL shooting talent, but like, he has the shooting talent that, could find him a bottom six role in the NHL, but just hasn't been able to crack through. But Manitoba was like, now what if we let that walk away? And Springfield's just like, cool, we will gladly take dudes who can rip. Yeah, we'll take guys who can rip the puck like that. No problem. I thought the two of them were really good for Springfield this weekend. I really thought that they pretty much poured it on Friday. Friday seemed like a much more a physical game for sure, not necessarily the prettiest game. But Springfield definitely seemed to have the ice tilted in their fashion on Friday. Saturday, it looked like it was more of the same until about the middle of the second period. Like, I would have, if I were a fan of Bridgeport, I probably would have turned the TV off when it was 3-0 and thought, well, that's the game. Bridgeport's going to go to Laval tomorrow, and we'll hope for the best there, that bus ride shakes them up a bit. But like, for them to dig deep and, complete the comeback there, that was I think that's a big moment it's a bigger moment for Bridgeport than it is for Springfield. And I say that because I absolutely do not trust Charlie Lindgren. So I think that's probably part of it for me. Like, if that would have been Joel Hoyer, I would have been a little more upset as a Springfield fan, because I think that's your starting goaltender, and Lindgren is more of a guy that you're just like, please don't do exactly what you did on a regular basis. But I'm willing to kind of accept that. Like, they played 2 good periods on Saturday for Springfield, and yeah, they blew a 3-goal lead, and that's bad. But defense is something that, and we've talked about this a bunch, defense doesn't get baked into a team until like after Halloween, usually closer to Thanksgiving, because in training camp, you don't spend time on defensive system. Like, that's not finished and fully installed until like Thanksgiving at the latest. And then all of a sudden you'll see these like sloppy goals just, and I think that's something where if I'm Springfield, I can take some solace in that going forward, even though I'd still be upset that we blew a 3-goal lead and should have taken an easy weekend sweep of Bridgeport here. But for the Sound Tigers, that ability to dig deep down and come back shows, I think, something that you didn't see from them a lot last year. And you definitely are seeing steps forward from guys like Durando and Simon Holmstrom, where last year they looked very much going through the motions, and this year they look a lot more ready to go out there and compete on a nightly basis. That alley-oop that Durando scored was an impressive display from him and his hockey IQ. As soon as that puck was on Cuevala's stick, he went charging right away, and he knew that Cuevala would see him. And I think that says a lot to him for his maturity, because he's always had those moments where he'll see something and get a jump and beat past everyone else. But it's one of those where he knew that he was going to have to go into a dirty area and chip a puck in through contact, which is not something he did a good job of last season, where he almost looked to actively avoid contact last year in some cases that were just like comical. I saw him on what could have, he stepped on the Jets, hit a breakaway last season, and he turns up, like, makes a backhand pass at the top of the circle because he doesn't want to get contacted by a defenseman and, just go shoulder down and drive to the net. To see that kind of step forward from him, I thought was huge for his development as well.
Well, you're talking about a guy who's 3rd in my prospect ranking. So I rank them based off NHLE throughout just skaters. I don't do goalies because it's hard now. Yeah. But with all the skaters, he's 3rd on the list. And you're talking about a list of players that is pretty deep. And he's 3rd on there with an NHLE now this year specifically of 21.2. So he's on pace for a 22-point player. He's taken a step up. And this is a 6th round pick from 2017. 6th round. He's not going to be Anders Lee type of 6th round player, but if he can even get to the NHL, money found. And so far he's showing that. Like you're saying, these high IQ plays, you're going, okay, hold up here. What's going on? We got something here. We don't quite know what it is, but there's something there. And he's taking those steps. Last year was a good kind of showing. He had those moments where, like, I am not getting into contact. I am not getting into these dirty areas. Where now it's kind of like, you need to do that to hit the next level. And I think he realized that, I guess, over the summer, to be like, oh my God, I have to do that to hit the next level. Okay, done. Which is wild that it took that long, but sometimes that's what it takes with some of these players. But now that he's done it, my God, he doesn't seem to be looking back. I don't think he's going to tear up the league at all, but if he could be a solid producer for them, that is money found. And if he can maybe scratch the surface at maybe getting to the NHL, again, I keep saying it, money found for the Islanders.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, the Islanders need bottom 6 players who are making ELCs.
They need anyone to make ELCs. Yeah. Oh my God. They can't keep spending on Leo Komarov. Thankfully, they scratched or they waived him and he went through waivers fine, but they need to find value. And they tried to do that this year, right? They brought in some veterans that league minimum deals at $750, but you need ELC monies and you need good ELC values. So thankfully we have Oliver Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson, but when it comes to the Bridgeport Islanders, and I know you don't call them that, but I will
not recognize that team.
You want to see guys like this take a step up. Of course, you want to see, like you said, the Holmstroms, but if you can get 6th round picks to take a step up, absolutely, by all means.
Yeah, and I always think of draft picks as buying lottery tickets. Like, some are, better, more likely lottery tickets than others. But if Holmstrom doesn't hit, that sucks because he was a 1st round pick, and 1st round picks are at minimum. If you have a 1st round pick and you don't at least get a usable NHL player out of it, you have done screwed up. Like, even if you don't get a first liner or a top six forward, but you get like a fifth defenseman or a solid fourth line grinder guy that you can respond, like that can play responsible minutes. That's the minimum bar you need from a first rounder. And while Holmstrom still has lots of work to go, his skating still in moments terrifies me, which is not the way skating is supposed to go, because he used to be a really good skater. And I don't know if he's gone backwards per se, or it just hasn't progressed as we'd all hoped. But like, there are still, I think the scariest part with Holmstrom is I still see the moments. I still see the flashes where I'm like, oh, that's what you saw when you drafted him there. But like, that's such a dangerous thing too, because you're always going to have moments with those guys who are super talented like that. And it's just, they string you along with hope. They're like that girl that you asked out who's like said, yes, you've gone on some dates, but like, she kind of gives you mixed signals. Like, you hold on to hope that it's going to keep working, and it never really gets to where you want it to be. And I think that's not unreasonable with Simon Holmstrom. I think he can develop and be the guy that they hoped he would be, but I think that window is closing fast. With Durando, like, his NHLE is high, but I also think that there's a case to be made that the role he would play in New York's system would not, or the role he'd be asked for, a bottom six kind of role, is not a spot that he's going to do well in. Not because
you put him on the fourth line, like as a Cal Clutterbuck or Matt Martin. No, that's not going to happen. You put him on the third line, maybe, but is he going to get that chance? He's going to have to do a lot better than this. Not a lot better, but continue this run for a longer time to be able to get a sniff at that chance.
Yeah, and I think I have some trust in Barry Trotz too, to not overcoach his system and to not try and square peg round hole guys like that, where he would not be trying to get fourth line grind minutes and penalty kill time from Durando, because you're I would expect him to do better than that. But not even the best NHL coaches are immune from doing stupid things from time to time. But I also think too, on the Springfield side, like, they got a lot of good performances this weekend too from guys like Hugh McGing, from Nathan Walker. Like, those are encouraging to me, if nothing else, because those were not exactly the guys you were hoping to carry your offense this year. Like, you wanted it to be Sam Annis, you wanted it to be guys like that. And the fact that you're getting depth contributions and good scoring early on, like those guys aren't having to, basically throw October out to get running. I think that's a good sign for them going forward. I think it's a good sign for Bridgeport going forward too, especially after what a tire fire last year was. And I mean, I've said it before in other places. The next coach of the Bridgeport Sound Tigers is going to be Rick Skrosky, who's their assistant coach. Like, I knew that as soon as they hired him. Like, at some point in the future, he will be that team's head coach. It's basically just a matter of how long can their coach now hold that off? Because as soon as I saw that hire, that's a Lou AHL head coach. That's a somebody he trusts and is bringing in, because he's looking at Brent Thompson and saying, if you aren't gonna make some things happen here and start getting this ship going the right way, your replacement is literally next to you.
I think he has to do two things to stave that off. He's got to hold, he being Brent Thompson, over a 500 win percentage this year, which he's right on the line right now, and develop Simon Holmstrom. If Simon Holmstrom doesn't turn into something more this year and they go over 500, he's gone. If he doesn't hit both of those, he's definitely gone this year. Because the life cycle, he's been there forever. On that merit alone, it's probably time for a change. And then you look at the results, which are okay. Like, he's winning, he develops players. Like, yeah, he does all right, but can they get more? And like you mentioned earlier, the Islanders need that being the NHL squad. They need those ELCs. They need to start developing guys, specifically like Holmstrom. Now that they haven't had a first round pick in 2 years, probably 3 after this one, like, they need to develop the guys like that and turn them into NHLers at whatever level, some sort of NHLer. And if they don't, and if they can't, that's a big problem. And then Kowalski's going to step in for sure.
What did I say? Rick Skrosky? Rick Kowalski. That's what I meant. Yeah.
I thought you had a funny name for him or something. I just
I think in my head, because in my spare time this past couple weekends, I've been playing NCAA 14 on the Xbox 360, and I'm starting from scratch, and I think he is my head coach at Ball State. So yeah, wrong Rick.
Right. But on Springfield, like they scored 3.5 goals per game against the Bridgeport Sound Tigers this weekend. And while Bridgeport isn't necessarily a good team, did I say Sound Tigers? I may have said it.
I'm so proud.
Anyways, they scored 3.5 goals for. That's good. That should be enough to win. The fact that they didn't, all right, cool, fine. Well, we still took one, right? And they did get a point going overtime. So, like, that's something. There's something to hold their hat on here. For the Bridgeport Islanders, they get away with one win. Sure enough, it's in overtime, but they get a win, and they get it from their main defensive prospect, and that's Robin Salo. Sorry, my camera timed out after half an hour. I have to keep resetting it, and I didn't see the timer. Every 30 minutes, it's got to be reset. But they get the overtime win thanks to Robin Salo, and that's a huge thing for them in their prospect pool, because this is a kid who they're banking on to be their next puck lugger, their next Nick Leddy, essentially. And the fact that he's now putting up points at the AHL level, not the SHL level like he was doing last year or Liga before that, now that he's doing it at the AHL level, they're like, all right, now we know we've got something in this kid.
It's funny, too, because in our preseason look at Robin Salo, who I know a lot of Islanders fans have been like, this is like they've had that kind of that hope, that sentiment that like he is going to be their next. Maybe not Michael Pellich or Ryan Pullock, but like their next, good, usable, like diamond in the rough, like Devin Taves. And I remember like doing the review. I'm like, I think he's good. I think he has potential, but I don't yet see that ceiling to his game. And like, it's definitely starting to show, and I'm definitely starting to see more aspects of it. And don't get me wrong, trying to find SHL film and Liga film to review for these is not the easiest task in the world. I very much do not, envy you having to try and to pull some of those potato cam games. But I am starting to see and come around more on Robin Salo than where I was even a couple weeks ago, where I thought like, I think he's talented, but I don't see I didn't see the top 4 ceiling that so many other Islanders fans and prospect followers and analysts like you were saying. And once seeing him a little bit this weekend definitely has, I wouldn't say changed my tune. I'm still not sold, but like I at least see the pieces now. I just don't always agree with where they end up.
Right. And it's only 6 games, right? Like that's the thing. Like now Islanders fans are going, bring him up. Bring him in. He's in NHL. And you're going, guys, it's 6 games. Yes. Like this looks great. It absolutely does. But there's one thing that we have to remember about the system is that it strains defenders and it puts them in a very precarious position. And by that system, I mean the New York Islanders system. Yep. They put them in, you're going to play a lot of time in your own end and you better not screw up. So we're going to ask a rookie, a North American rookie. Yes, he's played games in North America representing international level at some point. But not comfortably or not regularly. And we're going to ask him to be like, yes, now save us. Excuse me?
Yeah.
No, that is not fair. No, let him take some time. So far, so good. 6 games in, looks really good, but we're going to have to give it some time. So like being skeptical on it like you are, that's perfectly appropriate. Going like, okay, cool. I'm seeing some quality there, but I'm not going to say like, yes, he's the next Devon Taves or the next Nick Leddy for sure. Probably, but like 6 games in, 4 points looks great, but that's 4 points over 2 games, guys. Like, let's chill a little bit here.
Not to mention too, the absolute number one worst thing you can do for your prospect's development is to call him up, realize and overload him, and then have to send him back. Yo-yoing prospects is how you break them. It's amazing how many times you've seen like a young, promising prospect just get absolutely sidetracked because they keep yo-yoing him. And
look at Otto Koivula last year.
I wasn't going to mention it by name, but I was going to say the Lou Lamoriello is not immune to that criticism for yo-yoing some guys, but especially who was it else last season too that he
Sebastian Aho.
Oh well, Sebastian Aho, but I at least feel like there's a fair amount of merit to there, not because Aho isn't good, but because he couldn't find a place to carve out a niche on either side. It felt like he was too good for the AHL, and they'd call him up and be like, yeah, but you're not quite doing what we want you here. And yeah, you should have just, committed to the bid at some point, just being like, all right, well, you're going to have to tough it out and figure it out here because we're not sending you back to Connecticut, or we're sending you back to Connecticut. It doesn't matter how good you do. You're staying there the rest of the season, and we'll pick this back up in training camp. But like that's the one thing too, is you have to commit. Once you call them up, they're either staying or they're going back, and that's the end. You get one cup of coffee to prove it, and that's it. That's the way it should be. But so many teams just want to jerk their prospects around, up and back. Never works.
Yeah, they're just commodities, right? Which is kind of like, they are people too, though. So like, the people have feelings, and it's not just like, oh, my feelings are hurt. It's the loss of confidence, and that's the thing that the Islanders keep bringing up. And what we want to come back full circle on with Robin Salo is that confidence, right? He's got it now. That's great. But let him run with that a little bit. And that's something that the Islanders themselves preach, right? Barry Trotz says, like, I'm not going to throw these guys to the wolves because it's about building confidence. He said that directly about Noah Dobson and indirectly about Oliver Wahlstrom. And you see what is happening. Noah Dobson still hasn't panned out necessarily as we'd expect him to at this point, but Oliver Wahlstrom is. But at the AHL level, they need to do that with Robin Salo. 2-game sample over this weekend against Springfield and Laval. Looks great, specifically when it comes to points, because that's what people look at the most. But we need to see that over a little bit longer than just 6 games. So far, so good, but like, let's preach a little bit of patience here.
Oh yeah. I think it's fun to overreact a little bit, but I also think it's important to note that it is overreacting when it's like, oh, it's been 5 games. Oh, it's been 7 games. Like, and like I think of that when I come to our like preseason predictions, where it's like, oh yeah, we predicted Milwaukee to, basically run a very difficult Central Division, and they got absolutely wiped on I think it was Saturday by Chicago. Like, they got absolutely rinsed. And it's like, oh, but they were supposed. Yeah, it's one game, it's one weekend. Like, that will not make or break your season. Hockey is a sport full of random bounces. It's based on a flying rubber disc on the slipperiest ice surface we could come up with. Random and weird and fluky things are going to happen. Like, no, I don't think Robin Salo's weekend was fluky per se, but like, you still need to give him more time. Like, there are still things that he needs to work on. Yeah, he produced and points, but like, he's not going to come into the NHL and produce, a half point a game this season. Like,
it would be irresponsible to think that that's something that to hold that expectation of him. And that's the problem with when it comes to a number of prospects. You see like half point per game or point per game at the AHL level, like Michael Del Cole, who put up points this weekend as well. You're going, oh, great, let's go. And you're going, well, that doesn't always translate, right? Just what they do there does not directly translate to the NHL. And you see that with a lot of players at a lot of levels. Michael Del Cole, like I just brought up, is one of them. He's now a point per game. He was a point per game 2 years ago when he was in the AHL last, had 34 points over 34 games. They called him up for a year and a half now. And what did he do at the NHL level? A whole lot of nothing. We have a running thing on our show, which is the MDC stat line, which is flat zeros across the board on your stat line for shots, goals, points, assists, plus, minus, all that. He's not going to give you anything positive necessarily, and he might at some point, but he's not going to give you anything negative either. So he's not a bad player to have out there, but he's not going to give you a good or bad. And that's the thing. Like, but at the AHL level, my God, does he destroy? He is too good for the AHL, but not good enough for the NHL, at least when it comes to being a contender.
Absolutely. So let's go a little bit and talk about Bridgeport, what they have coming up here. They have a very fun weekend of travel, seeing their old familiar foes from last season, a Saturday game in Providence, and then a Sunday matinee they're both in Bridgeport. They have Providence and Hartford on a back-to-back Saturday 7 o'clock, Sunday 3 o'clock game. A good opportunity for them to continue to build, because that's the one thing I've learned is as much as we want to think of every game as a vacuum and in isolation, especially as you see so many teams from a Friday to Saturday look like 2 completely different teams. Bridgeport this weekend, for example. I mean, Friday they looked kind of bad. Saturday looked bad for at least half the game. And then Sunday they, ripped Laval. Like, that's in what looked like a very fun and exciting and kind of back and forth game too, where, it was a neutral zone, just teams flying through it. But like, that's still something you need to build that momentum going for. And especially too, Providence and Hartford are still pretty good teams, or at least that's how we're looking at them right now. Again, not jumping on the too early to make serious judgments train, but like, if Providence can come away from this weekend with 3 out of 4 points, I'd say that's a pretty good a good continuation from some of the momentum they built this weekend, especially Sunday in Laval.
Right. Yeah. So like Providence is not as good as the Islanders are right now. Of course, they're a 400 team with an 0-2-1-1 record recently. Their streak is, whereas the Bridgeport Islanders have a 2-game winning streak. So it's time to build off of that. Providence is in the best of states. Let's build off of that. And for me, what I'm specifically going to be looking for is guys like Samuel Bolduc who are making their transition back into the team. He played 2 games here over the weekend. He played the Saturday game against Springfield, and he played the Sunday game in Laval. And he hasn't put up any points, but he was the standout player for the Bridgeport then Sound Tigers. He was one of the better players. He had, I think, finished second on the team in points to Cole Bardrow. But outside of that, you're talking about a rookie, an AHL rookie, like a pro rookie, making it from the QMJHL, stepping up, again, a second-round pick, just like Robin Salo. I'm looking for him to also take that step forward, because as far as Islanders fans have been taught or told, is that it's neck and neck between Robin Salo and Samuel Bolduc as the top prospect. We're going to be looking at points to kind of separate them, even though they play 2 different games. Not really fair to them. But that's really who I'm looking for in this weekend head-to-head against Providence and then Hartford is, can Samuel Bolduc stand out again? And like the Hartford is playing better, the 700 team. But the Bridgeport now Islanders know them a little bit better than some of the other teams like Springfield. So they should know how to play against these guys. If they can make it work, though, that's another thing. But it's about building momentum, like you said. And that's exactly what Brent Thompson is going to want to see. Build on everything we've done over this weekend.
And I think one of the things, too, that they have going for them going against Providence is that Troy Grosnick is not there. They have to deal with Kaiser Sose, who we still don't know what he's going to be as a goaltender, and Callum Booth, who I think we all kind of acknowledge is maybe better for the ECHL.
Is that not the bad guy from the first Ghostbusters? Kaiser Sose?
Nope. Usual suspects.
Oh, okay. Close enough.
Bad guy from the first Ghostbusters was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Right, but the key holder, was it not the key holder was Kaiser Sose?
No, Vince something was the guy who was the key master. And then there was the
gatekeeper or something like that.
Yeah. I don't remember what her name was, but maybe you're right. No, it's not. It's definitely not Kaiser Sose. That's Usual Suspects. That's the whole reason we named him Kyle Kaiser Sose, because we don't know what he is.
Right. So like they don't have that's good. It's going to be good for Bridgeport to go against them this weekend. If they come out, like you said, I'm going to say if they come out 500, I'm going to be okay with that. And that doesn't improve their 500 record right now. But I'll take 2 points from a possible 4. That's all I care about. I don't want to see them regress into less than that, because then you're, again, regressing. And any regression is not good, because it's hard to think that this team would be regressing from what they were last year, which is a 3-7-5 team, right? Like, not good.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, too, is you could see, especially last season, there were teams that were just mailing it in. Like they were not thrilled about the playing conditions or, any of the travel or anything like that. And while there were definitely individuals who mailed it in last year, I believe AJ Greer is one of them.
Hard. Yeah, absolutely mailed it in. Near the end of the year, they got a little bit better, but they moved AJ Greer, and which is probably one of the guys who are like, okay, you need to go now.
Yeah.
So like, also we need to get rid of contracts. And so like, this is a slam dunk for us. But he was supposed to be brought in to like give them that veteran presence that they needed, and he did not.
And it was the most surprising thing is like he went to Newark and improved. Like no one's life improves going to Newark, but somehow AJ Greer managed to make that work, and I'm going to continue to use that joke as long as it stays true. But that was one of the big surprises too, is because like he looked terrible for Bridgeport last year. And then he went to Binghamton, who was another just tire fire of a team. And it's like, now you're playing better? Like you look like a different guy, like someone borrowed your jersey. But it really was. Last year, it seemed like was just everyone on the team from the game 1 last season was just like, yeah, this is a going through the motions. Let's get this over with, rip the Band-Aid off kind of year. And I was nervous because like last season too, we were like, on paper, this team looks like it should be competitive, even in this tiny 3-team, Groundhog Day division. But like this year, like I look at the roster and I'm like, this team should be good. But I've seen this movie before. So
I said the same thing. I think that they should be good this year. I don't think that they're going to run away with any division or be a top contender in any division or even when it comes to the playoffs. But can they be a at least kind of bubble team? They should be. I sure hope they will be, because if they aren't, there are bigger problems afoot here, right? Like if they're not a bubble team at the very least, there's some issues because they brought in some good veteran players. Chris Terry's a great one. Andy Andreov gives them that toughness that they were missing, and he's putting up points too. That's great. And then you had the prospects that should be taking a step forward, which so far have. Robin Salo would be one of them. Anatoly Golishev was one. Like, he put up some goals this weekend, and you're going, can he challenge to be not only a 13th forward with the actual Islanders, but could he be a difference maker when it comes to the Bridgeport Islanders? So far, so good. And then it comes back to Simon Holmstrom. With that added talent of Chris Terry, Austin Zarnik, you got Andy Andreov, you got like the aforementioned defenseman with Budzik as well. He's got talent around him, and they're going to be putting him in a top 6 role. He's got that talent where he could be able to feed these guys, and they should be able to do something. If he doesn't, he should be able to take that big step forward. So add that into it. This should be a much better team than it was last year.
Absolutely. And let's wrap it up here a little bit, as we are running a little over when I told you 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops, but that's all right. I think we've had a good conversation, but let's wrap it up there. Mitch, where can people find your work? Because if they are unfamiliar with you, as someone who listens to our show, they should be. You do great work. Please tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Well, thank you. You can find all my written work at eyesoniles.com. You can find all my video work at Deckhands. That's a YouTube channel, just Deckhands. It's a rookie fisherman or in a fishing boat. You have my Twitter handle is at TLOMitch. And then that's about it. I don't really have any other social media channels outside of Facebook, but that's just kind of like for the grandparents. So like, don't worry about that. You're not missing anything but kids' pictures. And that's not a whole lot of fun sometimes.
That's very fair. That's smart of you not to dive more into social media than you have to. It's a place. Let's put it that way.
I don't get Instagram and I don't get TikTok, and I'm not even that old. So like, I don't, anyways, I don't get it.
It will be a cold day in hell before I invest in TikTok.
Like,
I see the appeal, but at the same point, no. That's another thing that I have to, nope. I have too many things to check as it is.
Exactly.
Anyways, thank you very much for bailing us out as CC is on the IR. We will definitely have you back at some point to talk Bridgeport Sound Tigers in the future. Thank you very much for coming on, Mitch, and saving our bacon here. We are going to head to break. So if you're just here to listen to Bridgeport and Springfield, thank you for stopping by. Please make sure you subscribe to get episodes in a timely fashion. Follow us on social media. All of the links to everything you could want to do with us are scrolling down below here. But if you're listening to us, you obviously can't see that. So it's linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. Go there. You can find podcast links, our YouTube channel, all our social medias, all of that kind of thing. We will be right back. Stay tuned. Well, since CC is still on the IR for this episode, I have managed to secure someone to talk to about some hockey that happened in the AHL this weekend, because it's not great to have me just here by myself, blabbering nonsense, even though we will have to deal with that at some point. I managed to secure a top Milwaukee Admirals prospect evaluator from the on the Forecheck website from Super Bowl Nation, the Nashville Predators affiliate. I have their resident prospect expert, Eric Dunay, to join us on the show today. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you to talk to about the Milwaukee Admirals. I know that you know their prospects and that team very, very well. So thank you very much for giving us your time today. Let's start with a quick recap of the weekend here. Friday, David Cotton opens the scoring for Chicago, finding soft ice in the slot, and roofs a pass from Suzuki from the goal line. Second goal on Friday, similar play. Wolves are dominating possession in the Admirals' defensive zone for a few minutes. Jalen Chatfield finds soft ice, and Andrew Poldarowski found him from behind the net. Chatfield puts it over the blocker of Devin Cooley. CJ Smith bangs home the third one for the Wolves off a blown defensive coverage. Both Admirals penalty killers, Tennyson and Tony Rick, were covering Stefan Nason. Left Smith wide open, cross crease pass from Jack Drury, buries that one. Milwaukee at least made a game out of it late Friday. They made a late game comeback, pulled the goalie during a power play. David Ferentz finds Igor Afanaseyev across a Royal Road pass that on a set play from the faceoff, bring the Ads within 2. Matt Tennyson at least made the last few seconds a little more interesting as he gloved down a clearing attempt from Jack Drury, ripped one high blocker over Makiniemi, who didn't see anything because Joseph Bates screened him perfectly. Somehow Michael McCarron got credit for a primary assist here, which I'm hoping the scorekeepers are holding on to those receipts for tax purposes, as that was a charitable donation. Friday, Makiniemi makes 41 saves on 43 shots. Cooley stopped 28 of 31. Wolves 1 for 5 on the power play Friday, 2 for 4 for Milwaukee on Friday. Saturday, a little bit different of a story. David Gust opened the scoring on a shot from a low danger area that caught Devin Cooley unprepared as he was kind of late to the post and appeared not to take Gust seriously as a shooting threat until Gust shot it. Cooley's night didn't get better from there. Minute and 6 seconds later, makes a save from a point shot by Kevin Fitzgerald, doesn't control the rebound. Stefan Nosen left completely alone at the top of the crease, and he puts home the rebounds. 33 seconds later, Joseph Labate completely abandons Spencer Smallman in the slot. Sam Militic finds him. Cooley goes across the crease to get out there and challenge him, but he leaves the back door open. Max Latunov finds a second to get away from Freddie Allard. Smallman finds him. Tuna taps it in. Cooley's night ends as Delgazio is late getting into Podorowski's shooting lane and subsequently screens Cooley from not being able to see the release, while also not getting in the shooting lanes. Pretty much the worst of both worlds. Podorowski goes bar down over Cooley's glove. Cooley gets yanked. Parker Gahagan goes in. He makes it through the rest of the second period unscathed, but just a minute 9 seconds into the third period, Max Lajoie's point shot hits traffic in front. The rebound bounces right to Jack Drury, who hits the crossbar, but in kind of the confusion of whether or not it was in, Stelio Matthews whacks a tip pass from David Cotton out of the air to make it 5-0 Wolves. They make it 6-0 on a failed wraparound by Podorowski on a broken play. Finds CJ Smith just at the right place at the right time, taps in an easy one. The Ads do break up Lion shutout attempt as he fails to glove down a point shot from Jeremy Davies. Cody Glass scoops up the rebound, hits Joseph Labate, who's basically standing on the goal line for the tap in. But that was all the scoring from the weekend. Tell me what you thought, like big picture wise from the team. What did you see from Milwaukee Friday, Saturday, the whole time as a whole? Give me your thoughts here, Eric.
Yeah, sure. I think obviously both losses for the team, but in a way it was a tale of two teams, Friday to Saturday. I think Friday, especially in the opening frame, I don't think Milwaukee looked half bad. They weren't generating a ton of high danger chances in tight, but, on top of that, I think you mentioned off the top, Makiniemi stopped at 41 shots. So that's a pretty impressive performance nonetheless. And yeah, they made it interesting late, obviously too late at that point. Saturday, much different story. I think it was a team that was chasing the play all night. The first 10 minutes of the game weren't terrible. Again, another situation of just not getting a lot of good scoring chances. But, those 3 goals quickly towards the end of the first really kind of broke their back. And from there, it was just a lot of lazy hockey, chasing the play, waiting for the Wolves to make a move and then reacting. Leaving guys open in the slot, 2 guys covering 1 man, just a lot of breakdowns. I think there were probably a few that Cooley could have had, but, on top of that, like the defense in front of him was really just nowhere to be found. So 2 interesting games from a squad that is, still kind of figuring out who it is moving forward.
Yeah, I think Makiniemi absolutely stole Friday's game. I thought Milwaukee was actually the better team on Friday for the most part. They controlled the flow of the play for most of the game. Chicago did have some stretches where it was just, dominating play in Milwaukee's end. Towards the end of the second, in the last, I'd say 8 or so minutes of the third period on Friday, until Milwaukee pulled the goalie, had those power plays. But there was a good stretch there on Friday, I believe, that Chicago was absolutely just hemming them in. They scored a goal off of it. But I think the biggest difference is, like I said, Makiniemi stole it. Chicago put in their scoring chances they had. And, the Admirals didn't. Tony Rick had 2 breakaways and got robbed on both of them by Makiniemi. I think he stopped a third breakaway. Tony Rick in both games this weekend too,
Yeah.
I thought was very, very good, but just snake bitten. Like it seemed like it didn't matter how good of a scoring chance he generated, unless the net was wide open for him. Somehow he was going to find a way to get it stopped or miss the net or whatever. What really stood out to me is that Chicago, even when they were conceding shots in zone time to Milwaukee, they were on rebounds and made sure that Milwaukee didn't get to extend possessions, get second chance shots or anything like that. It was a lot of Milwaukee would generate like a point shot, go for like a shoot and retrieve kind of setup, and they would get beat in the race to the rebound or beat on the board battle for that rebound. And if nothing else, Chicago would get it, turn that into a zone exit and force Milwaukee to have to reset a lot. Like there weren't a lot of extended periods of possession for Milwaukee, even when they were generating most of the chances and most of the shots. Chicago was at least cleaning up the garbage afterward.
Yeah, I definitely saw that as well. And it's interesting because that is typically what I think Milwaukee's defense has been good at in years past, is like they'll give up chances, but they're from the perimeter and they'll shut down rebounds and really not allow any follow-up. But, I think this weekend is really going to challenge Coach Carl Taylor to try and mix up the lines a bit. On Saturday, we didn't really see much line juggling until late in the game. And, not that I think that doing so earlier would have changed the tide of things, but it's a really interesting lineup. I don't think this team is lacking speed per se, especially when you've got guys like, Tony Rick and Patrick Harper. But, some of the combinations I wasn't thrilled about. I know on Saturday they ran a second line of Michael McCarron, Matt Luff, and Joseph LeBate, who, all big guys. I've certainly been pleasantly surprised with Joseph LeBate so far this season, but none of those guys are going to beat the entire league in a foot race. I think they are going to need to challenge themselves to kind of mix and match some things if they want to start getting on those chances again. They're letting their defense play aggressive, and I think that's a good idea. But Jeremy Davies and Matt Donovan can't retrieve every puck, down low in the zone. So they're going to need to figure that out moving forward.
Yeah, that was also something too. It seemed like once the first period was over on Saturday, it was a lot of like, it looked like the ads were trying to like come up with a 4-goal play.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. So it was a lot of them just trying to take really risky plays, forwards leaving the zone early, and it wasn't working for them. Like Chicago was, if they weren't, forced into dump and chase, because Chicago was playing responsibly throughout the neutral zone for most of the weekend, I thought. It was a lot of, like you said earlier, them chasing the play. Chicago, I have to give them a lot of credit too. They really, like, they managed to weather storms from Milwaukee Friday and make sure that even though, they were getting outchanced early and through most of the first period and into the second, that they weren't, just rolling over. Whereas like when Chicago started to dominate possession, like they had minutes long possessions in Milwaukee zone where Milwaukee was just like, please just make it stop, make the noise stop. And you didn't see that from Chicago, that level of just getting hemmed in for minutes at a time. They managed to, even though when they were on the losing end of kind of scoring chances and shots, they were still keeping themselves in the game. And that's like from watching from a Milwaukee perspective, that's always terrifying to me, is when you're, getting chances and scoring chances, but you can't put any of them in and the game's still tied. And it's like one stupid bounce and we're behind in this game. And that's kind of how it started to go Friday a little bit. I will say Saturday for Milwaukee, I was very surprised that Carl Taylor did not take action quicker. I mean, I understand there's 1:50 left. There's no sense in calling your timeout at that point in the first period. But like, how do you put Devin Cooley back in the game in the second period, and then 5 minutes later you're pulling him? Like, if it's me, I'm trying to get, like, I'm putting Parker Gahagan in for the start of the second period, because you as a coach at that point, once the ship has left the dock and the game is starting, Admiral's ship right now. But once that's happened, like, your ability to kind of affect change in that game is pretty limited as a coach. Like, you have shake up the line combinations to try and, just shake up the energy, pull the goalie, call a timeout. And it seemed like by the time Carl Taylor was dipping into that bag of tricks to try and do something, like, it's already 4-0. What are you hoping for at that point? Like, you're clinging to hope, where I felt like, that second goal they scored in under like 2 minutes from the first one, that was your moment to call timeout, settle your team a little bit, because by the time it was 3-0, 90 seconds later, game's pretty much gone. You're pulling your goalie or making a goalie swap 4 minutes into the second. Like, realistically, that game's over.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that. And like, I think if you take the second period from Saturday in a vacuum, like it wasn't a half bad period for Milwaukee. Like obviously they gave a power play goal, but aside from that, there was some better play. There were some intermittent shifts that looked promising, but you're right. Like at that point, it was already 3-0 at the start of that period. Soon enough, 4-0. Myself, like I'm a little surprised. Devin Cooley got back-to-back starts to begin with. I think that this team's in a bit of a spot that they didn't anticipate being in, with Connor Ingram being in Nashville, because Dave Rittich is on the COVID list. I spoke with Carl Taylor before the season, and he pretty much indicated that there wasn't really much of a battle between Devin Cooley and Tomas Vamashka for the backup job, and that the plan was for Cooley to always kind of have it. But I'm not really sold on him as a AHL goalie, especially a starter. He was good, not great in the ECHL last season, and by no means do I think that these losses were on him. But there were some moments like that Dave Guskell on Saturday where you just kind of shaking your head as to what he was thinking. So not only do I think Gahagan should have gone in earlier on Saturday, but I probably would have given him the start as well.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that Cooley, like I didn't watch the game live. I watched it post-mortem, and I saw like the number splits for the minutes. And initially I thought, I'm like, oh, Gahagan got the start and then was terrible and then got yanked. And that's when they put Cooley in. And then I, watched the game, and that's not what happened. I was surprised to see that back-to-back start too. But I guess when you have the travel day, like I guess in some coaches' minds that makes a difference. I agree with you in your assessment of Cooley. I don't think that he is quite yet going to be an AHL goaltender, someone you can lean on as a starter. I think the plan probably was always to have Connor Ingram be, your true number one, getting 60-70% of the starts and mixing in Ingram here and there. And, Parker Gahagan in emergencies, or Tomas Vamashka in emergencies like this. But yeah, I also think too, it probably speaks a little bit to how much faith that the organization has in Parker Gahagan, which, to be fair, I feel like has a fair amount of merit to it. I would not, be jumping up and down to put him in starts in the net either. On the Chicago side from it, I was really impressed with Poldarowski. He balled out this weekend. He was visible often in both games, as well as making sure he was, doing what he does best, being in every scrum and generally being a pain in the ass to play against. He was everything that you wanted from a top end veteran signing for this year for Chicago, which, I mean, no one's really surprised by the output. He's been doing this for years, but very much plays the Brad Marchand style of maybe not licking people per se, but like getting in there, being not a big guy, but always involved in the play, in scrums down low, getting in, people's faces after the whistle, that kind of thing. I also thought the Latunev Miletic Smallman line was a lot more effective than, like, if you time traveled to me on Thursday and were like, one of the best lines Chicago's going to have this weekend is Latunov Miletic Smallman, I would have called you a damn liar. Like, but they were incredibly effective this entire weekend. They looked to have instant chemistry. They were buzzing, especially Saturday. Like Saturday, they were arguably the best line for Chicago. And that's a big upset given how, Chicago is quite a top heavy lineup. Really good to see them get going. I would have penciled this in, as two goalies for both teams that you didn't expect to see. You would have thought this would have been a Beck Warm versus Connor Ingram kind of matchup. I mean, Chicago's got to be happy with the output they got, taking 2 wins from goalies they maybe weren't thrilled to throw into the fire, especially against what is talent-wise a very loaded Admirals team. I mean, it's not a good look for our season previews where the ads have struggled a little bit out of the gates, and we were like, oh yeah, runaway Central Division title.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they are missing two big pieces. Ingram was a huge piece of the puzzle, and he'll certainly be back. But for the time being, he's in Nashville, and the other one is Tommy Novak. And obviously they kind of like swapped Novak and Cody Glass, and I thought Glass was okay this weekend. But Tommy Novak, I think over the past 2 seasons has demonstrated such a masterful ability of managing the game for the Admirals as a top center and really understanding how to beat AHL defenses. And, he's excelling in the NHL, albeit small sample size, but 3 assists the other night. It's a great performance. So I think they're missing him a lot. I think they're missing his leadership, that top line with him, Cole Schneider and Afanasyev in game one was fantastic. And they've got Matthew Olivier recently as well, but I don't know. Like even he still doesn't look like the player he was in 2019-20. Granted, 2 games. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button here. Like you mentioned, this roster is very talented, but I think that they've got a lot of lessons to be learned from this past weekend. And I don't have much doubt that Carl Taylor will be impressing those upon them this week.
Yeah, for sure. Like if I'm Milwaukee here, I'm not happy, but I'm not worried.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday was bad, but those are like a lot of the defensive breakdowns that happened Saturday that you saw are very fixable. And that's something where if you have a good coaching staff, and I think Milwaukee does, Carl Taylor is usually a very good coach and not someone who I'm like, man, I didn't like those decisions from him. That doesn't usually happen with him. So he's someone who I think that they can absolutely address the concerns that led to Chicago's couple of goals that they scored there that were things that need to be cleaned up, leaving guys wide open in the slot. That's something on film that, when you go back and see it, like, yeah, I can't do that as a defenseman. I will say though, like these games could have easily gone, I wouldn't say the other way. Friday could have easily gone the other way if, Tony Rick puts in one of those breakaways and Makiniemi doesn't lose his mind, basically stopping 41 of 43. Saturday, I feel like is more of a burn the tape kind of day. Like we were all bad pretty much to a man. So I'm not concerned about that as being a typical performance of them going forward. Friday night, you got goalied. It's hockey. That's going to happen to you. I think this is a very upsetting moment for them, but not one that they're going to, be apprehensive looking to the future. And they get, a chance to get right back at Chicago. They play them Friday as a sandwich weekend for Chicago. They head to Grand Rapids for a Wednesday game. They go Friday to Milwaukee, and then they go back to Grand Rapids on Sunday, which is a really stupid travel schedule, but whatever. It's the AHL. Random travel isn't a bug. It's a feature. Mm-hmm. So, but Chicago looked dominant on Saturday and absolutely dunked on one of the best teams in the division here talent-wise. If I'm Chicago, I am very excited that that's how good we can look when all systems are going. And I mean, even in some cases too, like they had a couple of good chances, but they managed to capitalize on all of them. And when we were giving previews for the season for this division, it's like, this is the death division. If you give one of these teams a window an open window, they are talented and they will take it. And that was a big step forward for Chicago this weekend, especially being carried by more of not just carried by their top end guys like Podorowski, but getting a lot of good contributions down the lineup from them. I will say one of the concerns I had from Milwaukee was Matt Donovan's play. Mm-hmm. I did not think he had a very good weekend for them. Took 2 very bad penalties, should have gotten called for a third where he was basically just holding a dude behind the play on the one goal that just got scored on them on Friday. And a couple of bad turnovers, just a couple missteps in the defensive zone. And I know Matt Donovan's better than that, but that was definitely not a good weekend performance from him. Did you have any similar thoughts on Matt Donovan, or would you like to, shut me up and tell me that he was good?
No, I agree. It was uncharacteristic. Obviously he went to Sweden last year, but I think we all know how Matt Donovan can play at the AHL level. So I don't have a lot of concern there. I think veteran wise, like I think Friday night, Matt Tennyson looked pretty good. Saturday night, not so much. So it was kind of an up and down weekend for a lot of guys, but the defense there really intrigues me for a couple of reasons. One, they're not really holding David Ferentz and Mark Del Gaizo back at all. And I think that's the right move. these are two guys who can skate, who can move the puck, who like to get low in the offensive zone. And, there's going to be growing pains no matter what. So I think stapling them to the defensive zone or putting them with someone who can't really move the puck that well. Granted, I don't really think there's anyone on Milwaukee's defense who is struggles at moving the puck outside of Josh Healy. I think that'd be a bad move for them. So, I'm encouraged despite mistakes and stuff. There's highlights too. David Ferentz had an unbelievable assist on Friday night on the Admirals' first goal. A pass that I have not seen many prospects in this organization make in a really long time. And secondly, with Davies and Jeremy Davies and Matt Donovan, same thing, they back in 2019-20, they were aggressive, both at even strength and on the power play. And now even more so. I think in the Admirals' first game of the year, Milwaukee was going with a 3 forward, 2 defenseman power play unit, but Donovan was like skating low as a 4th forward. So it almost doesn't even count. It's like having Roman Josi back there, right?
That's
and then, in this game or in these 2 games, even at even strength, I saw Jeremy Davies like forechecking and like getting near the hash marks at times as like a 3rd forward. And look, like I'm all about it. Like I think Jeremy Davies is, will end up being probably one of the best defenders in the AHL this season. And I think he knows how to control play at both ends. And, he makes mistakes at times, but he also brings something to this team that not many other players in the league do. So, when those guys have the ability to play their game, I think they can be difference makers. The problem with this weekend is they were stuck chasing the play pretty much all night. And then just lazy, bad habits started to take place. And it's never going to look good when that happens.
And the one thing, too, that I always like to preface the early season with, because it's not a very well-kept secret, but something that I guess a lot of people don't understand. When you do training camps in the preseason and stuff, you don't finish installing defense until, like, Halloween. Maybe, like, second week in November is when everyone finally starts to realize, like, oh, this is the defensive zone coverage I'm supposed to play, especially if it's a new team, a new system, a new coach, that kind of thing. I mean, all of the Milwaukee guys were, away from Milwaukee last year. And yeah, Nashville did the best they could, sending them to Chicago. It's still some push and pull of different team, different system, as well as, a lot of them came from Nashville camp. Milwaukee's going to do most of the same things that Nashville does, but not exactly. And in the defensive, if you screw up on a breakout or whatever, the puck usually just ends up as an icing or a turnover at the far blue line. Not a terrible, terrible thing. You screw up in a defensive zone coverage and you end up with, Stefan Noesen standing on the front door, banging home a free rebound. So I think that those, like, anytime I see bad defensive zone coverage early in the season, I'm like, yeah, but unless it's a player who, like, I didn't think much of to begin with, this will probably get solved. And I think Milwaukee's case, this will get solved. I'm not worried about them. The one thing I will say from Chicago's side that I did take note of is, I know Dominic Bach is a great shooter. I really like watching him shoot, but there were definitely moments on the power play where he's just like, oh, this pass is coming to me. My only move is one time. Like, and as a good shooter, normally I'd be like, that's something you should be doing. But it was like him ripping one-timers that were, somebody was already in the lane. The pass was super slow. The goalie was already there. And you're just more or less throwing the puck away. I wanted to see better from Bach on the power play, especially from that, as well, he is a good shooter. He needs to kind of maybe have a little more discretion as to when to let it fly, as opposed to just 100% of the time. I thought that would be a good area of improvement for him. But other than that, Chicago played really well. I would have liked to have seen them, defend their blue line a little bit better, I felt like Milwaukee, especially Friday, walked into the zone uncontested a little too easily. But given results, I can kind of, we're picking hairs there.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from Milwaukee here from this weekend moving forward? Anything like that, Eric?
Yeah, no, nothing major. I mean, like I said, I think this is going to end up being kind of a throwaway game. Lessons to be learned, but nothing to panic over. I guess my one final thought is a player that kind of caught my eye this weekend. Didn't really show up on the score sheet at all, but Patrick Harper, I think, looked a lot better than I had seen him in Chicago last year. And that's key for him, a very undersized player coming from college. He's got great hands. He's got great wheels. He can shoot the puck, but He's, kind of punching above his weight class here when he stands at, 5'7", 5'8". So I thought he looked a lot more confident this weekend, with zone entries and challenging defenders with the puck. So I was pleased to see that kind of a small positive throughout the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Eric, for coming on to talk Milwaukee Admirals and Chicago Wolves from this past weekend. I'm sure we will have you back at some point. Where can people find your work? Because it is very good, and people should go out and seek that if they are Admirals fans or if they just like hockey in general. You do good work. Where can people find it?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at onthefutureOTF or online at ontheforecheck.com, talking everything Preds prospects.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. We will see you soon. We are going to head to break here. So if you're just hanging out for Milwaukee, thank you for stopping by. Make sure you subscribe to get episodes in a timely fashion. Check us out on social media. All of that can be found at our link tree, linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're going to pay some bills, and we will be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thank you again to Eric from OTF for talking Chicago Wolves and Milwaukee Admirals with me. I am now flying solo here to talk about our last series that we wanted to talk about, and that is the Henderson Abbotsford series over the weekend. This is going to be strange for me too, as I'm used to having CC here who can tee me up and kind of chip in and give good analysis, whereas now I'm kind of by myself. So I'm going to try and make this as not weird as possible, while also acknowledging it's going to be a little weird, but let's get right into it. Pretty cool opening there for Abbotsford with the First Nation chief and the Sedines in the pregame ceremonies there on Friday nights. I understand that Saltner is the captain of Abbotsford, but I still think it's weird to have defensemen take the ceremonial faceoffs. I realize that's a minor criticism and a minor thing, but I don't care. I think that's weird. And, your assistant captain who's a forward or something should be the guy out there and not the defenseman captain. I love the Stardust drumline in the arena in Abbotsford. I've been saying for years the team should do more things like that, bring the atmosphere, build fan culture. I really liked seeing that from Abbotsford. But let's get into the games. Brief recap here. Friday, Abbotsford won 3-2 in overtime. Give you a quick recap of the goals that were scored here. Bailey looks off Logan Thompson like he was going to pass on a 2-on-1, instead rips it past him for the first goal of the game. Primary assist to Devontae Stevens and a secondary assist for goaltender Michael DePietro. Dorofeev ties it at 1 just a minute and 26 later off a bad turnover from Sheldon Dries. Ben Jones scores on a shorthanded goal to put Henderson up 2-1 after he won a race to a loose puck. That was an errant pass to the point of the power play. John Stevens evens it up at just 2 minutes and 16 seconds later off a beautiful feed from behind the net by Klimovich. Sneaks it under the arm of Logan Thompson. Jared Lukovic's secondary assist there. Madison Bowie hits the winner in OT from Justin Bailey. Logan Thompson stops 33 of 36. Michael DePietro stops 22 of 24. Both teams were 0 for 7 on the power play on Friday. Sunday, Abbotsford wins 3-0. Nick Patan opens the scoring up after getting a rebound kicked right to him from Dylan Ferguson. Ferguson stopped Patan's first shot, but couldn't find the rebound behind him. Thought it was between his legs, closes his legs to try and cover it. Instead, it's sitting next to him. Patan, taps in a loose puck on the power play there. Assists to Sheldon Rempel and Justin Bailey. Dries follows it up on a 2-on-1 that developed as Henderson's Caden Corsic misses the net on his shorthanded odd man rush. Rebound rims around to Sheldon Dries. Caught 3 penalty killers deep in the offensive zone. Dries looks off Dylan Ferguson, rips it past him unassisted on the power play. Nick Patan puts home the empty netter to seal the deal. Dylan Ferguson stops 26 of 28. Artur Silos stops all 26 for the shutout. Henderson went 0 for 2 on the power play. Abbotsford went 2 for 4. Big picture takeaways here. Friday, a pretty sloppy effort in the early going as both teams looked off in their execution. A lot of bobbled passes, a lot of failed plays in the neutral zone. Both teams also looked very bad on the power play, which, is typically what happens when both teams combine to go 0 for 14. But they looked bad in different ways, I thought. Abbotsford struggled to gain the zone and get set up, but looked okay when they did manage to get a zone entry on the power play. Henderson didn't really have as much of a problem getting in the zone, but really lacked patience and ended up forcing plays making passes into the slot that weren't there, or just firing shots into shooting lanes that end up hitting shin pads instead of going on net because they didn't have the patience to wait for that shooting lane to open up or for that passing lane to open up. They seemed very much like they were deciding the play instead of letting it come to them on the power play. Game was pretty back and forth on Friday until about the third period. That's when Abbotsford's forecheck just took over and kept the ice tilted for almost the entire third period. They carried that momentum into overtime. Sunday, much more physical game. Both sides were throwing their bodies around. It was a fun game to watch. Abbotsford's effective forechecking they got from the third period on Friday definitely carried over as they kept Henderson from generating much offense and kept playing the Silver Knights end for long stretches of the game. Abbotsford looked a lot smoother in their execution on Sunday as well, whereas a lot of the sloppiness on breakouts and making passes under pressure that plagued Henderson on Friday night hung around for Sunday's game. This allowed Abbotsford to play faster than Henderson across all three zones on Sunday, despite the fact that I don't think of Abbotsford as having a lot of team speed compared to Henderson, but their ability to execute on plays quickly, control loose pucks, and make passes where they need to go right away, right on time, that allowed them to play fast, and that's what made a big difference for them on Sunday. Henderson's first power play looked solid as they were able to generate some scoring chances and help cut off Abbotsford's momentum. But their second power play was back to looking like it did most of Friday, where it was just awful. On the player level, I thought Sheldon Dries, aside from one very bad turnover that Henderson scored on Friday, I thought Dries was solid all weekend, very much involved in the play in all three zones whenever he was on the ice. It wasn't shocking to see him end up on the score sheet after a solid effort in both games, but he was someone that I took notice of when he was on the ice. That one bad turnover aside, which, yeah, you can't be making blind passes like that at your blue line, but that's not something that I'm sure we're going to see as a repeat behavior through his season. Both DePetro and Seelovs looked solid, and like we said in our season preview of Abbotsford, that Abbotsford has goalie depth that might be the best tandem in the Pacific Division this season. Logan Thompson, I think, is a better goaltender than either of them, but Dylan Ferguson very much is not an ideal backup. He had rebound control issues all game. For Henderson, I thought Ben Jones played really well in both games, definitely stepped up. Dorofeev was also very good. He did the things that Dorofeev is supposed to be good at. He shot the puck a lot. He found soft ice. I didn't love Braden Pahal's game, but I thought his deployment didn't help him. I thought he looked like a fish out of water on the power play, made a few too many mistakes in his own defensive end. Quite a few times it seemed like the game was moving too fast for Pahal. And while he's trying to simplify his game, that's not great when you're being leaned on by your coaching staff to play big minutes and need to generate offense in games where you're either tied or down in goals. I think he'll be okay overall, but he struggled this weekend, and I think scaling back his minutes would have been a good move by the staff. But I also realize they were shorthanded in terms of the talent on the blue line they could just put out there in his place. Looking forward, I'd be a tiny bit worried if I were the Silver Knights. Taking a look at this weekend and what that means through the season, Krebs, Miramanov, Lecision were all across town on the Golden Knights. Alan Quine, Gage Quinney, Jonas Ronberg were out of the lineup, maybe injured. We don't get those kind of reports at this level. And that's a majority of your top six forwards plus a top four defenseman. You take those off any AHL team and, well, they're probably going to look bad. And that is by and large what you saw from Henderson this weekend. You saw a team that had to have its, guys that are usually not considered to carry the team with offense, having to step up and fill roles. Some of them, like we talked about earlier with Ben Jones, I thought did a good job stepping up. Others like Pahal did not. But that's when you thrust somebody who's not capable of leading a team in scoring into a role like that, you're usually going to end up with bad results, even over the short term. I am a tiny bit worried, though. While the call-ups will likely be back, we don't know when that's going to be, and we also don't know why, Quine and Quinney and Ronbjerg were out of the lineup, or when they will be back. Also, Derek Pouliot was supposed to help fill that power play quarterback role that Ryan Murphy left last season, and well, he very much underwhelmed in that role, creating offense this weekend. He had tunnel vision in the offensive zone at times and had quite a few defensive lapses that led to scoring chances for Abbotsford. The defensive lapses, I expect from Pouliot a little bit. He's not on the roster to be a shutdown defenseman, but when the offense isn't flowing from him, and it very much was not this weekend, those defensive mistakes become a lot more painful to kind of swallow. Nothing here is unfixable, but it's fixable with a good coaching staff, and Manny Viveros is not behind the bench currently in Henderson. So there is still some uncertainty of how the staff will handle that. And that's that plus everything else is what kind of sounds the alarm for me. I really do have some concerns about Henderson. Now that I don't think that they're going to be a terrible team the rest of the season, but at least from what I saw from them this weekend and what kind of the implications are going forward, I am at least a little bit nervous. And I think that that's more than merited from the output we saw from them this weekend. Moving on here to talk about Abbotsford and them going forward. While not the sharpest looking of weekend sweeps, Abbotsford got it done, and in my opinion was the better team in both games. Both goalies were solid. They came up big. They took Ontario to extra time in both road games the last time they played. They have Ontario coming up. Ontario has looked very good in the meantime. This upcoming weekend against the Reign is going to be a big test for Abbotsford, and we're going to see if they can't keep that momentum going in their direction, especially as when they were looking good against Henderson, they were clicking on all cylinders. They were getting contributions from guys a little further down the depth chart. And again, anytime your goaltending that we expected to be solid shows up and balls out the way that it did this weekend, I think that's a very good sign for them going forward. Abbotsford is in a tough spot as the Pacific has a lot of teams that are pretty good on paper. So they will be needing to keep up pace and collecting points like they did this weekend. That is, all I got to say about that series this weekend. Obviously a good showing from Abbotsford, an unsurprising one from Henderson, given the call-ups and guys not in the lineup that we saw. But we have a little bit more we could talk about here, but I think that's a good place to leave it as I am by myself, and I'm sure you're getting tired of listening to me talk. So that will be it for the show. Thank you guys so much for watching. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and a number of other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click on the podcast drop-down menu on the top right portion of the website and enjoy. And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe to get episodes in a timely fashion. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we'd also appreciate it if you'd rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show. Your reviews help us improve the show. You can follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter and at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found in our link tree, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. If you do not know how to spell The Calder Farmstead, I don't know how you managed to hear me talk about where you can find our links, because it's probably spelled out somewhere real obvious. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's DYSFUNCTION. So he can make music for you too. I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. Both of those are personal accounts. And are mostly hockey and mostly going to be related to, the things you see from us at the Calder Farmstead. But there are, hot takes from me on pop culture or, what's going on in the world. If you're interested in finding my stats work, we have the 21-22 AHL graphs up at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. You can find one number summaries of players throughout the AHL there, how good they are and how they match up statistically to the rest of the league, as well as information on special teams, standings projections, the whole 9 yards. You can all find it there. CC is not here to sign us off, so I will be doing for him. Thank you guys very much for listening to it. Your support is why we keep going with the show here, because it is a true labor of love. Thank you very much for listening. Please dump and chase responsibly. We will see you next time.